Our second speaker is Helena Michie, and she will speak about Robyn's voices.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can real people hear me? Okay. All right. So I do want to apologize in advance if I were giving this paper with Robyn, as I often do. There would be a beautiful PowerPoint. But since I'm giving this paper for Robyn, you'll have to do without the PowerPoint. And I would have loved a soundtrack, but Robyn is in a different place. So this is called Robyn's Voices. It's the middle of the night and you are far from home in a car a little bit too old to trust. You're alone on a 4-lane highway and all the light you see comes from the moving illuminated bubble of your car as it moves forward through darkness. You fear irrationally, perhaps you are in a clunky 2002 red Prius, that you will outrun your headlights. Your radio is on for company, but no matter how you twist the dial, you hear the crackle that means you're between the places you want to be. Suddenly, and for no particular reason, a voice comes to you out of the radio, pure in sound and as clear as the night itself. You know that voice, you name it. That voice, high perhaps, but very full, might belong to Emmylou Harris, to Winona Judd, or Lucinda Williams. The voice might belong to Bonnie Raitt, who wrote a song about this very situation, but apparently from a car with brighter headlights. Because you're in an older car, the singer's name does not flash up in neon green on your dashboard. You must listen and you must name that voice yourself. Whoever the singer is, she is company. Her voice stays with you long after the song is over or after it is absorbed again into static. The Prius with the bad headlights in this example is mine. The vignette was inspired by my travels in Texas and by Bonnie Raitt's home, which if you're very nice, Robyn will sing for you in the Q&A. The you, the second person addressed, comes to me as a gift from Robyn. With one article on the phenomenon of direct address and later the related book, Gendered Interventions, Robyn opened our eyes to this persistent way of fashioning the relationship between author and reader. She opened up for me a new way of writing, a new way of thinking, a new subject position. In this time of newly urgent and emergent pronouns, we have never needed you more. The voice I hear as I write this vignette is Robyn's. The work of identifying and describing this voice, the project of this paper. Naming the voice requires of me an untangling, like the untangling of the sound of Naomi Judd from her daughter Winona's late at night in the Texas countryside. Robyn and I have written and presented together for so long that it's sometimes hard to tell her voice from mine on the page, but also oddly on the phone. My younger son, who's a mimic and has voiced each of our dogs with a distinct tone, cadence, and personality, tells me we sound too much alike to assign us separate persona. This mirroring, this blending has partly happened on purpose. In the 3 articles we've written together, and especially in our book, Love Among the Archives, Writing the Lives of Sir George Scharf, Victorian Bachelor, we went over every sentence together, not exactly trying to erase differences in style and syntax, but to make sure each word was the result of many other words between us. This was a long process, 17 years. When people ask which part of the book we wrote individually, we are at loss to answer. As I tried to explain to my dean come salary time, I did not, in fact, write half a book. And yet, I am the last person to deny that even once it was published, Love Among the Archives registers the differences between us on every page. After all, in 1986, when Robyn and I first got to know each other, first eating coconut and then in a writing group, she was finishing Gendered Intervention, and I was writing a book called Sororophobia about the choreography of identification and disidentification, sameness and difference between women of the same generation. The project of acknowledging differences between and among women is very important to me, even when that acknowledgement feels deeply personal or even painful. Robyn and I are not the same person, even if I keep on intruding myself into a paper honoring her unique accomplishments. For example, we both like to think we're formalists, although I think we mean something different by it. Over the 32 years of our friendship and collaboration, we have had only 2 serious quarrels, the kind that produce anger, silences, and tears. One of them, God help us, was about metalepsis. I won't go into the positions each of us took on this crucial topic, not here at least, because all you narratologists, and I see you, will be on Robyn's side. Suffice it to say that she stands by her highly technical and limited definition, and that mine is more playful, theoretically sophisticated, and a lot more fun. I fear the day that we will have to confront each other about free, indirect discourse. I spent the last few weeks rereading our joint work to listen for the sound of Robyn's voice. A colleague of mine once compared reading something you've published to a dog returning to its own vomit. I've always been too afraid to do it, too afraid to find an immutable typo and a fixed, embarrassing sentence, a fact so wrong that it would shake the foundations of my sleep. Looking, or rather listening for Robyn, however, made the return a curiosity and a pleasure. I resolutely ignored possible typos and came unnauseated across this paragraph. Our adventures in the Scharf archives did not begin at the beginning of his life, and they took up a large chunk of our own middle years. We seemed always to find ourselves in the middle of writing, of gathering information, and of the record of Scharf's life. Of the thousands of pages of diaries and letters we read, the vast majority were composed during Scharf's middle age, that segment of life when long repetition establishes the patterns by which one is likely to continue to live. A daily concern of middle age for everybody is, of course, the litany of physical complaints, inevitably resulting from longevity, especially for those who love to indulge in food and drink. In middle age, Scharf's body had become so inflexible, he needed his housekeeper's husband to help him in and out of the bath. Until his advanced old age, when he had to order a bath chair, Scharf was far from sedentary. Like the typical Londoner even today, in midlife he walked everywhere, going out of his way to and from work many days to look at the progress on construction sites, to admire the urban parks and trees, and simply to be out in the weather he so scrupulously observed and recorded. He sometimes fell down in the street though, and once injured his hand in breaking the fall. This was the first long paragraph in my rereading in which I could hear Robyn flying pretty much solo. For one thing, the crispness of the syntax is hers, the multiple appositive clauses corralled into strict parallelism that allow individual sentences and thus the paragraph as a whole to build. It looks like wandering as she follows George through the streets, but like George himself, Robyn knows where she's going, even allowing her subject to fall gracefully or ungracefully with the understatement, he sometimes fell down in the street though. The prose is resolutely lucid, reminding me that Robyn held fast to lucidity throughout the 1980s, when it was, and this is an understatement, unfashionable. Robyn was not opposed to jargon, if by jargon we mean highly technical language. Her clarity went deeper into the structure of sentences with their careful parallels and scrupulous acknowledgement of grammatical subjects and their agency. Lucidity, in this sense, is an ethical project and a feminist one. Then there's the approach. As Sue Kim noted, Robyn's work insists on the place and placement of bodies, an embodiment even in the face of abstraction. Feminist narratology, after all, is about challenging the abstraction of formalism by positing different bodies, real readers. Even those ghostly denizens of narrative dictionaries, the imagined and assumed of ideal readers that haunt my students, seem in Robyn's world to have and to occupy bodies. This is perhaps most evident in her second book, Having a Good Cry, whose very premise acknowledges the involvement of body in readings, and crucially, in rereading. If Robyn's readers live in their bodies, so does, or should I say did, George Scharf, who read disappointingly little. It was Robyn who reminded me, as she reminds readers of this paragraph, that George lived in a body, a round, aging, and ultimately vulnerable body marked by the pleasures of the flesh. It was Robyn during our recreation at reenactment of one of George's dinner parties at the Great Country House at Knoll, who insisted on wearing Spanx, the better to record on her body the heft of every bite of each of the 7 courses, plus the ubiquitous Parmesan savory. It was Robyn, and I swear I did not plan this, that in the National Portrait Gallery archive got George's diaries for the last 10 years of his life. I got the sprightlier, if not much slimmer professional, who may or may not have had sex with his male beloved. She got the older man, still clinging to middle age, whose replacement male housemate acted only as a nurse. Over the years that we were looking together at the diaries, I would look up for accounts and accounting of George's busy life to ask, perhaps too cheerfully, "What's George doing now in your diary?" If I close my eyes, I can summon her voice with its characteristic lilt and edge. "He has gout again." And 2 pages later, "and diarrhea." It is Robyn's gift that she was able to make the later George, the late middle George, almost as interesting as the younger man, that she saw and was able to piece together a second, far less sexy male household and a complex figure out of entries about bloating, abdominal distress, and leg pain. It is her gift to be able to produce a rounded figure that invokes vulnerability and strength, the ability to fall in the street, to get up, and to note it briefly as one of the events in a day of eating, sketching, and name dropping. That's George, not Robyn, the name dropping part. It is her gift to accept aging and the narratives it brings with it. Robyn, for example, was the first person to inform me with the gentle rigor I associate with narratology that I am no longer middle-aged. I hope the long quotation from Love Among the Archives gives a sense of Robyn's writing. I'm actually uncomfortable usually with the idea of voice and finding one, which is why perhaps I pluralized the noun in my original title, voices, like the pluralized feminisms of Robyn's landmark collection of essays, is both inclusive and something of a hedge. I hasten to say I suggested the S so that all the hedging was mine. And Robyn, of all the scholars I know, is one of most suspicious of anything that smacks of a core self, would probably be as uncomfortable as I am. But as I went through my defamiliarizing Kindle version of Love Among the Archives, I found myself willing, able, and delighted to find Robyn and to use the highlighting function to mark her voice. Robyn on my Kindle is pink, since the program does not offer the characteristic lavender of Robyn's sometimes severe pen. I'm well aware that Robyn, should she have the opportunity, might not agree with my markings. She might remember different conversations, different acts of writing. She might see in some of the pink highlights a word or phrase that, to her mind at least, betrays me as the author, and that would tempt her to turn in a reversal of Lady Macbeth's nightmare, the incarnadine, my favorite color, of sea green. But unless Robyn objects, I'll keep my marked up copy. I believe I have found and can hear her voice through the computer screen and on the page, and that it is a voice well worth celebrating. Speaking of voices, I promised earlier that Robyn might sing for you. That was only sort of a joke, born perhaps out of desire and envy. Every few years, and certainly as I wrote this tribute to my longtime friend and partner, I come officially to the realization that I've never heard Robyn sing. This despite the fact that she's a trained and talented performer, a member over the years of many choirs, who sings, apparently, everything from classical to rock and pop to Gilbert and Sullivan. After this conference, she'll be going with her current choir to perform at Wells Cathedral. I have, it seems, much more to learn about Robyn's voice, her non-academic voice, her many voices. Thank you.